Iran stands as a pivotal force in the Middle East, exerting considerable influence through its provision of weapons, military training, and its suspected role in various attacks and the instigation of conflicts within the region. Its strategic position on the global stage is underscored by its leadership in the resistance movement against major powers including the European coalition, the United States, and Israel. With one of the strongest military presences in both the Middle East and West Asia, Iran has advanced to the point of manufacturing its own defense equipment. According to Global Firepower, Iran ranks as the third most formidable military force in the Middle East and 17th worldwide among 145 nations. Specifically, its tank fleet holds the 7th position globally, its aircraft fleet 22nd, and its naval capabilities 34th. In 2021, Iran's defense budget was projected to reach approximately $20 billion. Given these factors, Iran represents a persistent adversary and a crucial ally, depending on the geopolitical landscape. The nation plays a significant role for various countries, with its relationships in the Middle East ranging from alliances to long-standing enmities, even with nations that were once considered close allies. This outlines the complex and dynamic nature of Iran's international relations.
To put it succinctly, the core reason behind the relationship between North Korea and Iran is that they both share a common formidable enemy. Several experts suggest that the ties between these two countries date back to the Iranian Revolution. However, in reality, their relationship extends much further back. At that time, Iran was still known as Persia and was establishing connections with Korea roughly 1600 years ago. This was through cultural exchanges during the era of the Three Kingdoms of Korea, predominantly via the Silk Road. This is evidenced by various archaeological findings and official records of trade exchanges between the two countries. North Korea, as we know it, came into existence as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea only after World War II. Hence, the official records of their interactions only began post-1945. However, in the early years of the Cold War, around 1947 to 1950, Iran did not have any relations with North Korea, as Iran was then linked with the Republic of Korea, also known as South Korea. Both were allies aligned with the United States, leading the Western Bloc. Meanwhile, North Korea expressed support for Iraq's territorial claims against Iran around 1971 to 1972, even condemning Iran for seizing Abu Musa and the Greater and Lesser Tongues. It was only in 1973 that the relationship between Iran and North Korea began to improve with the establishment of diplomatic relations. This period saw the signing of various bilateral agreements relating to trade, cultural cooperation, and news agencies between the two nations. Notably, in 2013, North Korea constructed the Ar-Rahman Mosque within the Iranian embassy complex, making it the only country, apart from Armenia, to have a Shiite mosque without a Sunni mosque. Throughout the Iran-Iraq War, which raged from 1980 to 1988, North Korea positioned itself in support of Iran. This alignment wasn't just in words. North Korea actively engaged in military cooperation by sending medical supplies and artillery ammunition to Iran. A key point to understand is that both countries share similar interests in opposing the influence of the United States and its allies globally. They have also openly shown support for the political rights of the Palestinian people, voicing their struggle and condemning the policies of Israel. They stand against Israeli intervention in Palestinian territories. Adding to the complexity of this situation is the recent news that Iran has launched its fourth-generation Khorramshahr ballistic missile. This missile, boasting a range of up to 1,243 miles, is reportedly capable of reaching most areas in the Middle East, including Israel. Both nations have long been the focus of international sanctions, primarily imposed by Western countries. Most of these sanctions are related to their nuclear programs and military activities, which are viewed as violations of international norms. However, despite their strong relationship, Iran and North Korea do not completely align in their stance on various manifestations of international terrorism. Indeed, both provide military support to Hezbollah in Lebanon and back President Bashar al-Assad of Syria in his fight against ISIS in Syria. Yet their perspectives differ when it comes to conflicts involving the Taliban, Boko Haram, and ISIS in Iraq. North Korea argues that the United States' efforts to suppress these organizations are seen as interference in the internal affairs of Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Iraq. On the other hand, Iran perceives Sunni Salafi extremism as a direct threat to its interests. They have repeatedly accused the United States of not doing enough to eliminate these groups or even of striking deals with them. In addition to their diplomatic relations, there is significant military and technological cooperation between North Korea and Iran, especially in the realm of weaponry and nuclear technology. Since the 1980s, as reported by the United States Defense Intelligence Agency, North Korea has indeed built a reputation for supplying inexpensive, technically unsophisticated yet reliable weapons. Their clientele includes third world countries that lack the resources and time to develop these systems, including Iran. The arms trade relationship between the two countries surged during the Iran-Iraq War and evolved into further military cooperation, including the exchange of nuclear technology. Syria also became involved in this collaboration. During the Persian Gulf War, North Korea is believed to have supplied Iran with a variety of weapons, such as artillery, anti-aircraft machine guns, mortars, tanks, small arms, sea mines, as well as anti-tank and surface-to-air missile systems. Beyond weapons trade, the military cooperation between North Korea and Iran includes the exchange of expertise, particularly in special operations and underground facilities. North Korea is believed to have provided training to Iranian military operators in advanced infiltration techniques. In March 2013, the trio North Korea, Iran, and Syria jointly decided to block the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, which aimed to establish standards for the cross-border transfer of conventional arms. Further evidence of their cooperation in missile development was revealed by weapons expert Jeffrey Lewis, who noted that the second stage of North Korea's 2017 Hwasong-14 ICBM ballistic missile development bore similarities to further developments in Iran's space launch vehicle designs. It's no surprise then that Iran is often mentioned as being behind North Korea's current advancements in nuclear and missile technology. In 2020, an annual report by the United Nations disclosed a collaboration between North Korea and Iran in the development of long-range missiles. This information was presented by an independent UN panel of experts to the Security Council in February 2021. The cooperation included the shipment of essential parts that took place in 2020. Experts have been monitoring the sanctions imposed on North Korea since 2006. These sanctions were aimed at pressuring North Korea to halt its nuclear and ballistic weapons programs. The UN report asserts that North Korea continues to defy nuclear resolutions and is persistently advancing its ballistic missile infrastructure. Additionally, North Korea has been actively seeking materials and technology for its weapons program from overseas sources. Iran, on the other hand, first faced nuclear-related sanctions in 2018. Investigations by these experts also revealed cases where North Korea acquired ships, sold fishing rights, and violated sanctions by continuing to export coal and importing refined oil in excess of the permitted limit under a 500,000 barrel quota, all done clandestinely. In response to this report, the United States presented satellite imagery and data to show that North Korea exceeded its oil shipment quota. Meanwhile, China and Russia, accused of being major supporters of North Korea, rejected these claims. Iran has long denied any such missile cooperation with North Korea. Despite what seems like a clandestine relationship, the fact is that these two nations are increasingly showing their closeness. For instance, the president of Iran received congratulations from Kim Jong-un on the occasion of the 43rd anniversary of the Islamic Revolution of Iran. In his congratulatory message, Kim Jong-un expressed his hopes for further development of bilateral cooperation in various sectors between the two countries. He also emphasized that the friendship between North Korea and Iran was forged through their joint struggle against imperialism. Kim's expressed his wishes for Iran's success in achieving prosperity and national development. Moreover, it appears that they are also striving to form cooperation in facing potential threats to global security. His statement was made by the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, last year. He urged an increase in cooperation between the two countries to promote regional peace and stability, and to jointly combat actions that could harm global security. This has led to speculation suggesting that Russia might be quietly forging cooperation with Iran and North Korea. It is suspected that Russia sees the strengthening relationship between these two nations as potentially aiding them in confronting the United States. Western diplomatic sources in Moscow have reported that Kim Jong-nam, the chairman of North Korea's Supreme Assembly, traveled through Russia during a visit to Iran in August, accompanied by a number of military experts. Recently, it has been reported that in the past few months, Iran and North Korea have become two major military supporters of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. Earlier this year, the White House in the United States announced that Russia had used ballistic missiles supplied by North Korea in its attacks against Ukraine. Additionally, they have accused Russia of engaging in talks with Iran to acquire short-range ballistic missiles. Although U.S. intelligence states that missiles from Iran have not yet arrived in Russia, they believe that a deal is likely to be struck. Discussing the relationship between Iran and Lebanon, the two countries have been cooperating since the 16th century. This cooperation grew stronger following the 1978 Iranian Revolution, which overthrew the Pahlavi dynasty and established Iran as a Shiite Islamic state. During the Iranian Revolution, Lebanon served as a refuge for important Shiite figures from Iran. The choice of Lebanon as a sanctuary was no coincidence, as it is one of the Middle Eastern countries with the largest Shiite population, considered safe by Iran. Moreover, in 1974, Musa al-Sadr, a prominent Shiite Islamic figure, established an armed wing named Amal, which has now become one of the largest parties in Lebanon. Therefore, due to Lebanon's role in the Iranian Revolution, the bond between the two countries strengthened post-revolution. Iran has even been involved in conflicts in Lebanon, citing the Brotherhood of Shiite Muslims. Iran's role in the Lebanon conflict has a long history, starting with the formation of the militia group Hezbollah in 1982. Since its inception, Hezbollah has been well-funded and armed by Iran, making Lebanon its operational base. This group played a key role in ending the Lebanese Civil War, which concluded in 1990 and later in 2006. Hezbollah was instrumental in pushing back Israeli forces during the Lebanon-Israel War. These significant events in Hezbollah's history have substantially increased Iran's influence in the region. After the war against Israel, Iran and Hezbollah aligned on becoming staunch anti-Zionist states, opposing Israel's existence. After decades of strong relations between Iran and Lebanon, the two countries have continued to foster their cooperation across various sectors. In the economic sector, for example, Iran has invested millions of American dollars in building a wide range of infrastructure in Lebanon. This includes bridges, roads, hospitals, and over 90 schools and universities. These funds, coming directly from Iran's coffers, showcase Iran's commitment to maintaining a positive relationship with Lebanon. In 2021, the trade volume between Iran and Lebanon was quite substantial, reaching $46.8 million. Iran also supplied Lebanon with 13 million gallons of fuel within a year. In the military sector, Lebanon, serving as a base for Hezbollah, which acts as Iran's proxy, receives protection from potential Israeli invasions. Lebanon is particularly vulnerable to Israeli incursions, with Israel's aspirations for a greater Israel that encompasses various Middle Eastern countries, including Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Egypt. To counter the potential for Israeli invasions, Iran has equipped Hezbollah with advanced weaponry, including drones and missiles. So, what benefits does Iran gain from assisting Lebanon in terms of economy and security? Indeed, Iran has its own interests, whether they be economic, political, or military. Economically, Iran is reported to use Lebanon as a hub for its arms trade, a sector known to be one of Iran's largest sources of income. Politically, keeping Lebanon from falling under Western influence, whether through Israeli invasion or Western aid, allows Iran to protect the borders of Syria, their main ally. Furthermore, regarding access to attack Israel, Iran utilizes Hezbollah based in southern Lebanon to launch attacks on Israel. This has been evident, for example, in Hezbollah's responses to the tensions between Hamas and Israel since October 2023. Thus, Iran's support for Lebanon is aimed at maintaining the stability of its allies and preserving its influence in the Middle East. With the various forms of assistance provided, the trade involved, and the positioning of Hezbollah in Lebanon, the relationship between Iran and Lebanon seems poised to continue for a long time. But is that truly the case? Surprisingly, the relationship between Iran and Lebanon is currently at a crossroads, primarily due to a very clear reason: the economic crisis. The economic crisis that has struck Lebanon since the 2010s until now is not without reason. Lebanon has faced negative sentiment from Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries due to its cooperation with Iran. This situation underscores the complexities of the geopolitical dynamics in the Middle East, where alliances and economic stability are closely interlinked, often influenced by broader regional politics and international relations. The economic crisis in Lebanon has been so severe that in 2020, the World Bank classified it as a low-income country. Economic surveys reveal that 1/3 of Lebanon's population lives below the poverty line. A quarter is unemployed, and the income gap has effectively erased the middle class. This economic turmoil has led to widespread hardship for the citizens of Lebanon, with inadequate internet services, chaotic healthcare, rolling blackouts, and a drinking water crisis. And what's the root cause? Lebanon's alliance with Iran. Previously, Lebanon had managed to avoid such an economic crisis thanks to billions of US dollars in aid from Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. However, this assistance evaporated after Lebanon allied with Iran. Beyond the economic crisis, Lebanon has also faced a security crisis due to the presence of Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran. While Hezbollah is often portrayed as the protector of southern Lebanon from Israeli incursions, on the ground there has been opposition to its presence. For instance, in the village of Ain Ebel, local residents clashed with Hezbollah in October 2023, when Hezbollah attempted to establish military infrastructure. The political crisis is another significant issue, with protests in 2019 and 2021 demanding Iran's exit from Lebanon. The dissatisfaction among Lebanese citizens towards Iran primarily stems from the aforementioned economic crisis. This context paints a picture of a nation grappling with multifaceted crises, all intertwined with its political alliances and regional geopolitics. Despite numerous protests, Iran appears unwilling to withdraw from Lebanon, a stance underscored by Lebanon's failure to execute its 12th presidential election. This electoral impasse was triggered by a walkout orchestrated by Hezbollah and the Shiite-aligned Amal party from the parliament. It's widely speculated that this walkout was strategized because Hezbollah's endorsed candidate, Suleiman Frangieh, was facing potential defeat in the second round of voting. The selection of Lebanon's president is a pivotal event, significantly shaping the future dynamics of Iran-Lebanon relations. Should Suleiman Frangieh, the candidate from the Shiite party backed by Hezbollah, emerge victorious, the ties between Iran and Lebanon are expected to tighten further. Such an outcome would likely grant Hezbollah increased authority, enabling them to fulfill their ambition of establishing a military base in southern Lebanon. Iran's influence in the region would also expand, bringing them closer to realizing their strategic goal of creating a land bridge through Syria and Iraq. This corridor would serve as a vital supply route for Hezbollah, facilitating the transfer of arms directly from Iran. Conversely, if Jihad Azour, the former Lebanese finance minister and ex-director of the IMF's Middle East Department, wins, Iran risks losing its sway over Lebanon. Azour is believed to be the presidential candidate groomed by the West, aimed at disrupt the existing Lebanon-Iran alliance. Therefore, the direction of Iran-Lebanon relations hinges on the outcome of Lebanon's presidential election. This scenario prompts a compelling question: which path serves Lebanon's best interest? Should Lebanon continue its alliance with Iran despite the economic turmoil, or should it pivot towards collaboration with Western entities to navigate out of its financial crisis? In terms of the history of relations between Iran and Israel, there have been several phases. Initially, there was a period of friendship between Israel and Iran, lasting from 1947 to 1979 during the reign of Reza Shah Pahlavi. Notably, following the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, Iran was the second majority Muslim country, after Turkey, to acknowledge Israel as a sovereign state. However, everything changed when Mohammad Mossadegh became the Prime Minister of Iran in 1951. He pioneered the nationalization of the country's oil industry and severed ties with Israel. But this shift was short-lived. In a dramatic turn of events, Mossadegh's government was overthrown in a coup orchestrated by British and American intelligence agencies in 1953. This coup restored the Shah to power, reinstating a loyal ally to the West. In the aftermath of the Six-Day War between Israel and Arab nations, Iran was one of the first countries to step in and assist Israel in its recovery efforts. Iran became a major supplier of Israel's oil needs. In a testament to the friendship between Iran and Israel, a significant monument was established, the Eilat-Ashkelon pipeline. This monumental oil pipeline, stretching approximately 124 miles, was built to transport Iranian crude oil to the Mediterranean Sea. The trade relationship between the two countries flourished rapidly. Israel's national airline operated direct flights between Tel Aviv and Tehran. Moreover, Iran and Israel embarked on extensive military projects, though these initiatives were often shrouded in secrecy. However, the landscape dramatically shifted after the Iranian Revolution and the fall of the Pahlavi dynasty in 1979. Iran immediately adopted a starkly anti-Israel stance. Ayatollah Khomeini, the new leader, was dissatisfied with Reza's socio-economic policies, particularly his close ties with the United States and Israel and reliance on oil revenues. Khomeini viewed Israel as a colonial state and illegitimate, seeing Reza's engagement with Israel as a violation of Islamic principles and Iranian social customs. Furthermore, Iran found itself at a crossroads with Sunni-majority countries that were increasingly aligning with the United States, a close ally of Israel. The relationship further soured when in 1979, Israel reportedly owed Iran about $1 billion for business conducted before the Iranian Revolution. A significant portion of this debt was for oil purchased by Israel, with the revolution's victory by the Pahlavi enemies. Israel and its companies decided against repaying this debt to Iran. Ultimately, Iran sought a return to Islamic traditions and severed all official ties with Israel. Iran no longer recognized Israeli passports, and Iranian passport holders were prohibited from traveling to occupied Palestine. The Israeli embassy in Tehran was closed and handed over to the Palestine Liberation Organization. In the 1980s, there was a brief period where a small window of the relationship opened between Iran and Israel, underpinned by a $75 million arms deal during Operation Kerrang. However, when Khamenei succeeded Khomeini as Iran's supreme leader, tensions escalated significantly. Khamenei vehemently described Israel as a cancerous tumor in the heart of the Islamic world that needed to be eradicated. Furthermore, President Ahmadinejad also infamously declared that Israel should be wiped off the map. On the other hand, Iran officially recognizes Palestine as a state and rejects the two-state solution despite the cultural and historical differences between Iran and Palestine. Iran is predominantly a Shia Muslim country, whereas the majority of Palestinians are Sunni Muslims. Nevertheless, Iran views the Israel-Palestine conflict as a struggle against colonization, aligning with the anti-Israel narrative prevalent in the Muslim world. Iran initiated Quds Day, observed on the last Friday of Ramadan, as a day of opposition to the celebration of Jerusalem Day. Iran's support for Palestine extends to training numerous Palestinian militants and providing a substantial arsenal for use against Israel. Iran's unwavering support is particularly evident with Hamas and other Palestinian jihadist organizations, offering financial aid, weapons, and training. The relationship between Hamas and Iran strengthened in 1992 after Israel deported hundreds of Palestinians, including Hamas leaders, to Lebanon. In Lebanon, Hamas received military training from Hezbollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Beyond supporting Hamas and militant groups in Gaza, Iran expanded its influence by forming a network known as the Axis of Resistance. This is an informal political and military coalition opposing Zionism and Western influence, including the Syrian Arab Republic, the Shia militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon, and various militant groups in Palestine. Iran's hostility has not gone unanswered by Israel. Israel has maintained relationships with its rivals such as Saudi Arabia and the United States. In opposition to Iran's nuclear program, Israel has taken assertive actions including attacking Iranian nuclear facilities, assassinating Iranian nuclear scientists, and launching cyber attacks that crippled Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Over the years, there have been numerous sabotage attacks against Iran's nuclear and military facilities, widely attributed to Israel. These attacks have targeted not only personnel, but also several prominent scientists. Being a nuclear scientist in Iran has become synonymous with constant danger. In the past decade, at least 5 Iranian scientists have died in car bombings and shootouts. What's more, Israeli leaders such as Netanyahu have even deemed such attacks as justified. It's not only nuclear facilities that Israel has targeted. Iranian gasoline stations have also been attacked. Most notably, on December 18, 2023, the majority of Iran's gasoline stations were rendered inoperative due to a cyber attack suspected to be linked to Israel. This allegation was made by Iran's oil minister, Javad Aji. Fundamentally, the tension between Iran and Israel is not limited to ideology or proxy groups. Both are suspected of being behind a series of prolonged attacks against each other's interests, both within and outside their territories, though they publicly deny such involvement. Israel, believed to possess dozens of nuclear weapons covertly, has vowed never to allow Iran to develop a nuclear bomb. Is normalization a possibility? Considering that several Arab nations in the Middle East have chosen to normalize relations with Israel to garner more support from the West, as seen through the Abraham Accords, it's a question worth pondering. For instance, the United States has been actively mediating a potential agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel, even though Saudi Arabia and Iran, which have had a strained relationship since 2016, are beginning to normalize ties. The same cannot be said for Iran's relationship with Israel. Recently, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi vociferously condemned the efforts of Arab nations to normalize relations with Israel. He argues that normalization with the Zionist regime does not create security. Moreover, the prospects of normalization with Israel have been further delayed following a series of attacks on Gaza, implying that restoring relations with Israel is next to impossible. Indeed, it is crucial to create a shared sense of security, as was the case in past decades. However, the current landscape is complicated and vastly different from the past. Why? Today, the focus is on competition for dominance and power in the Middle East rather than seeking support. For example, Iran opposes the hegemony of the United States in the Middle East, while Israel consistently rejects any efforts to withdraw American troops from the region. This indicates that both countries have been engaged in a low-level war for over a decade, with no signs of change in sight. Answering this question is no simple task. Why? When we talk about the history of their relations, it's incredibly complex and marked by periods of tension and cooperation. For a long time, Iran and Turkey have both strived to gain influence in the Middle East by supporting opposing proxies as part of their proxy conflicts. Iran and Turkey have long been at odds over conflicts in Syria, Libya, and the South Caucasus. However, these two nations are also major trading partners, depending on each other. They share common interests in several areas, such as the Kurdish separatism issue and the Qatar diplomatic crisis. In 1926, the first treaty of friendship was signed by both countries. Its fundamental principles included friendship, neutrality, and non-aggression towards each other. This included protecting each other from possible actions against groups trying to disrupt peace and security, or from coups in either country. This policy indirectly was aimed at the internal issues of both countries, namely the Kurdish minority groups and minorities who have often engaged in armed conflict in both nations. Until the 1970s, when the Pahlavi monarchy was overthrown through the Islamic Revolution, the relationship between Turkey and Iran became complicated. The dynamic between Turkey and Iran can be likened to a fine line between friendly rivalry and intense competition. Actually, in the past, Turkey's relationship with Israel resulted in numerous disputes between Turkey and Iran. However, Turkey's neutral stance on the conflicts between Israel and Iran served as a guarantee for the maintenance of their bilateral friendship. This spirit of cooperation was reflected when Turkey and Iran once joined forces against terrorists in Iraq. Yet their relationship soured again during the Arab Spring and the Syrian civil war. This deterioration was partly due to the intervention of Turkey's right-wing AKP government in the disputes between the Shia and Sunni groups since the early days of the Arab Spring. Moreover, they also had differing views on the conflict in Yemen. Iran and Turkey supported different groups, leading to an official disagreement between the two countries. Again, this shift occurred after the rise of the conservative government in Turkey in 2002. Before this, Turkey maintained a neutral foreign policy regarding religious and sectarian conflicts in the Middle East. Once more, it's quite challenging to pinpoint the exact state of relations between Iran and Turkey because the dynamics change almost every year. For instance, in 2020, following the peace agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, which was normalized through the United States, Iran and Turkey were the most vocal critics of the agreement. However, at the same time, they had differing views on the conflict in Azerbaijan. Iran criticized Turkey's role in the clash, arguing that Turkey should have supported peace initiatives. In response, Iran even boycotted Turkish goods entering its country. This is where it gets confusing for many people. Despite their fluctuating relationship, both Turkey and Iran are aware of the need to enhance their bilateral military relations with a focus on counterterrorism, battling ISIS, and the joint efforts of Iran, Turkey, and Russia to curb battles in parts of Syria and the conflict in Palestine. However, in terms of trade relations, these two countries are very closely linked. Both are part of the Economic Cooperation Organization, ECO. The largest exports and imports between these two countries are gas and oil. In fact, the value of their cooperation almost reaches 30 billion USD per year. Turkey only stopped purchasing Iranian oil entirely in 2019 to comply with sanctions imposed by the United States on Iran. However, the two countries have continued their business relations, despite various types of relationships having shaped the economic ties between Iran and Iraq. What causes the ups and downs in their relationship is geopolitical competition, conflicts in regional goals, and security issues. In the Middle East, both countries seek influence. Therefore, even though they share common ground in combating terrorism, drug trafficking, and enhancing regional security, differences in political and ideological opinions persist. The fluctuation in their relationship depends entirely on the political conditions in the Middle East. If we revisit historical issues, both countries have long attempted to exploit shifts in regional balance. What's the impact? It leads to increased competition, especially in Syria and Iraq. The factor of Israel also adds complexity to the Turkey-Iran relationship, marked by historical ties that include trade, tourism, and some collaboration in intelligence and military areas. But in the context of the war in Gaza, for Turkey and Iran, the events have opened the door for their relationship to potentially strengthen. The reason is that there's a growing assumption and effort that these two countries will take part in the revisionist axis, aiming to create a post-Western world. The reason is straightforward. The myth of the unbeatable Israeli military and intelligence apparatus is now shattered. In this context, Iran and Turkey are said to be able to seize this moment to replace Western influence in the Middle East. As a result, the US government's efforts to recalibrate the regional order that facilitates the Arab-Israel normalization have been disrupted or even completely eliminated, at least in the near future. All of this opens the path for closing the gap between revisionist actors, namely China and Russia. However, there's a significant hurdle for Turkey in joining the revisionist axis. What is it? Turkey remains a member of NATO despite recent speculation about Turkey leaving NATO. In fact, Turkey's NATO membership plays a significant role in balancing actions between Western allies and Russia. This means that, fundamentally, Turkey's revisionism is more reformist in nature. The second reason is that, on the other hand, Turkey also sees Iran's non-state allies as potential threats in Syria and Iraq. This leads Turkey to maintain a safe distance from Iran. However, as long as the war in Gaza continues, both countries might set aside their competing interests and prevent potential clashes between their ambitious regional policies. The impact and consequences of the evolving dynamics between Turkey and Iran are complex and unpredictable. Once again, the simplicity of the reason belies the complexity of the situation. Both actors seek to reshape their environment, capitalizing on the global political transition with the backdrop of wars in Ukraine and now in Gaza. When a new order comes into power, their competition for regional influence is likely to resurface. Therefore, predicting the direction of Turkey-Iran relations remains challenging. Considering their historical rivalry for strategic dominance in regions like Iraq and Syria, coupled with their different forms of revisionism on the global stage, it's evident that any emerging alliance between Turkey and Iran may remain fragile and susceptible to global tensions, both in the medium and long term. The anticipation is that Iran-Turkey relations will continue to encompass both collaboration and competition, marked by mutual distrust yet maintaining a level of cooperation. Despite significant changes in their relationship seeming unlikely, cooperation is expected to continue in areas such as counterterrorism, combating drug trafficking, and enhancing regional stability. As for whether Turkey and Iran's relationship will mirror that of the United States and Russia, the answer is no. Both countries have a track record of finding common ground amidst occasional conflicts and navigating their complex relationship. The balance between their cooperation and competition is influenced by geopolitical realities and their individual goals. Discussing the relationship between Yemen and Iran means we need to consider two distinct eras, before and after the Iranian Revolution. Why? Because these two eras are different. In the 1960s, before the revolution when Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was in power in Iran, Iran supported Yemeni fighters against Marxist militants. The reason was that Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was a pro-Western monarch in Iran. However, after the revolution, Iran continued to provide support to Yemen, but specifically directed it towards the Houthi movement, which emerged in the 1990s. This movement arose as opposition to Yemen's president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, who was accused of corruption and supported by Saudi Arabia and the United States. The Islamic Republic of Iran began to grow closer to Yemen following the end of the Iran-Iraq War. It began with Iran hosting religious students from the Houthi group. Among these students was Hussein Badreddin al-Houthi, who later led a rebellion in Yemen against the government. Why did Iran choose to support the Houthi rebels? The reason lies in the fact that the Houthi is an Islamic political and military organization with a Shia orientation. However, in reality, there are differences between the Shia beliefs of Iran, which mostly follow the Imamiyya sect, and the Houthi, who are primarily adherents of the Zaydiyya sect. Essentially, they belong to different branches of Shia Islam. Yet Iran and the Houthi share common interests, including the desire for a Shia-led government, a dislike for predominantly Sunni Saudi Arabia and its ally, the United States. Moreover, Iran's support for the Houthi group grew stronger during the echoes of the Arab Spring Revolution in Yemen. The situation is such that many kingdoms in the Arabian Gulf, especially Saudi Arabia, have a history of concern regarding Iran. These nations often make efforts to limit and counter Iran's regional influence. The Arab Spring moment could potentially isolate Iran's influence further in the Middle East. On the other hand, the relationship between Iran and internationally recognized South Yemen, supported by Saudi Arabia, has deteriorated. This is due to Iran's support for the Houthi government in North Yemen. In fact, the Yemeni government even announced the severance of diplomatic ties with Iran because of its support for the Houthi rebels, ultimately shifting the Yemeni embassy in Iran to the Houthi government. In general, it's evident that Iran now plays a much more substantial role in Yemen than before 2011, due to additional opportunities for engagement and new incentives for Iran to support anti-government movements and establish a Shia state in Yemen. The lengthy and intense Arab Spring uprising in Yemen against the Saleh regime allowed Iran to work more effectively with the Houthi rebels, especially after the Houthi gained de facto authority in the Sada province. Although they share common interests with Iran, the Houthi rebels essentially have their own role to play in Yemen. The 2011 uprising in Yemen was primarily driven by economic grievances, such as corruption and increasing poverty. Then, in 2014, the Houthi group protested against the government's fuel reforms. As they work to hold back the geopolitical influence of Saudi Arabia in Yemen, Iran has forged a partnership with the Houthi, encompassing areas such as oil, trade, and electricity generation. While taking control of North Yemen, the Houthis utilized both legal and illegal sources of income to secure their territory and enrich their group's leadership. For legal income, the Houthis levied taxes and import duties on goods entering their areas of control. They claimed to be the legitimate governing authority in the north. However, this dual tariff system drained the economic strength of traders and caused a drastic rise in prices in the northern region, making it unaffordable for the majority of the population. Yet, the Houthis' primary and illegal source of income has been the sale of smuggled oil products in Yemen's black market. Although the group doesn't control Yemen's oil and gas fields, they have ambitions to develop the energy industry. Houthi officials have called on foreign companies to invest in oil exploration in the areas under their control. To this end, Iran has signed economic cooperation agreements covering the fields of electricity and oil, as well as trade and economic exchanges. Since the early days of the Houthi takeover in North Yemen, Iran has been supplying approximately 200 megawatts of electricity to Yemen. Iran has also inked an air transport agreement with the Houthi, where Iranian and Yemeni airlines will operate 14 flights per week for each destination. Iran and Houthis' cooperation in the military domain has successfully transformed the Houthi from a local guerrilla group into a more sophisticated armed force, with the ability to effectively target both land and sea objectives. Security assistance from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps through the smuggling of weapons and ammunition allowed the Houthis to bolster their defensive capabilities. However, in recent times, Iran has ceased the secret arms shipments to the Houthi as part of an agreement mediated by China in March 2023. The goal is to rebuild diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia. On paper, in recent news, the United States claimed to have seized Iranian weapons intended for the Houthi in Yemen in early 2024 near the coast of Somalia. This seizure occurred during escalating violence in the Red Sea related to the Israel-Gaza conflict. Iran also assisted the Houthis in building their own weapons factories and played a role in shaping Houthi media. The Houthi group often coordinates with Iran and pro-Iranian armed groups in Iraq on information and propaganda with the aim of garnering public sympathy worldwide. For example, the Houthi group claims responsibility for the attacks they carry out, so the extensive information disseminated by the Houthi group can be attributed to Iran's involvement. Their choice to play a role in the media has proven to be highly effective. To some extent, the success of the Houthi in becoming an influential group in Yemen has also benefited Iran. In fact, the Houthis' resilience and unpredictability indirectly put pressure on Saudi Arabia. Iran also gains indirect access to the Red Sea due to the presence of the Houthi. On the other hand, the Houthi group has greatly benefited from Iran's support so far. They have been able to withstand prolonged conflicts without losing their controlled territories, including the capital Sana'a. All of this is thanks to military training and weapons associated with Iran. However, it is worth noting that Iran's support is primarily effective during times of conflict, and it remains uncertain whether Iran can or is willing to support the Houthis' political goals during peacetime or at least during ceasefire periods. This depends on the strength of Saudi Arabia's support for South Yemen. In essence, Iran holds significant influence over the decisions made by the Houthi group. But fundamentally, the Houthi remain distinct from other Iranian proxies like Hezbollah or Hamas. First, the Houthis have financial autonomy from Iran, which means they do not significantly impact Iran's economy. Second, the Houthis do not belong to the Twelver Shia branch, unlike Hamas, which is a Sunni movement.